All right, so when we talk about transporting plants, we need to know about the vascular bundles and where they're found in the plants. So the plant you need to focus on is the dicotyledonous plants, this top one here, okay? You can get monocots as well, but we're just going to focus on the dicots. So we just really, the key thing to take from this is familiarize yourself with where these vascular bundles are found and what these vascular bundles consist of. So the two main tissues that we're going to find in the vascular bundles are the xylem and the phloem. Let's write these down. So xylem and phloem. And from previous learning, just remembering that the xylem, its role is to carry water and minerals up the plants, whereas the phloem vessels are carrying sap, which is like water, amino acids, sucrose, from source to sink. So it could be going up or down the plant. Right, let's look at the roots. And I've done my own drawings. I think it's a really good habit to get into lots of areas of biology. When you're not familiar with things, just draw out the different locations. It will help you with learning the words. And also, you could easily be asked a question about, there'll be a photomicrograph of a section of a root or a stem, and are you able to identify the different regions? So this is our root, and you can see there's our root hair cells. And the root, its job is to absorb water. So water is going to move through here, through the cortex, and it's going to get inside this central part. And that's what we're going to focus on. This is where the vascular bundle is, and it's containing this X-shape structure here, which is what I've drawn here. This is the xylem, so just think of X for xylem. And then in between the arms of this xylem bundle, we've got the phloem. So there's one here, there's one here, one here. So these biological drawings, they just help to simplify things. The outer part of this vascular bundle contains a very important layer called the endodermis, which is really important for getting the water from the cortex into this region here. So this is when we talk about the things like the Casparian strip. So if you've forgotten that, have a look back at those tutorials as well. So for the roots, we can say that the vascular bundle is found in the center. We can say that the xylem vessels take up this X shape. So it's not like that it's an X-shaped vessel, but it's like this. So we've got something like that. Lots of hollow vessels taking in up the shape of an X. And that's going to help with supporting it, because it's having to deal with pressures from the transpiration pool, that suction that occurs. This X shape helps to support this part of the root, doesn't let it collapse in itself. And here's our phloem. They're responsible for getting the food, the sugars, sucrose, down to the roots, because they can't make their own food. All right, then we don't need to know too much, but you do need to know these words. We've got sclerenchyma, parenchyma, and parenchyma. Let's talk about parenchyma first. So this region here we've learned about before when you talked about the three water pathways, the symplast, apoplast, and vacuola. This is all happening through the vacuole, the cortex of the roots. And these cells, they're really common. They're the most common cell in inner plants. They're called parenchyma. That's a type of tissue. If you think of it as packing tissue. So it's a big part of support, but it's also allowing it for the water to pass through as well. And we'll talk about sclerenchyma and parenchyma next. So let's move. That's the first part of the roots. So hopefully, I would certainly encourage you to just learn to draw this, do it off by heart, see what you can remember. It's going to really help. Let's go to another organ now. So the root is one organ, and then if I can it's just disappeared off the top of the screen here, I think. There's the stem, that's our second organ. So these vascular bundles are now found in a completely different place. The middle is completely empty of vascular bundles. And we've got this, we call this region the medulla. So there's going to be more parenchyma tissue in this middle part. So where are the vascular bundles now? Well, they're on the outer edge. And within that outer edge, we can break these different sections up. If we think of it as there's one bit there and this middle bit here as well. So we've got an inner part and we've got an outer part. So that inner part is the xylem and the outer part is the phloem tissue, the phloem. So the vessels that make up the phloem and the vessels that make up the xylem. So they're right next to each other, but we say that the xylem is slightly closer to the center than the phloem, and that carries on throughout. You can see this ring-like structure is taking place. Then you've got this bit here that's been colored purple, which you just need to be aware of. It's not responsible for anything to do with transport, but it's important for support and strengthening of the plant. This is the sclerenchyma. So let's colour that in there so you can see it, that's sclerenchyma. And then we've got another tissue, this region here, which is going all the way around, called the parenchyma. So again, I draw this as, by the way as well, this here is just showing you a monocot stem. You need to know about dicot. The monocot, there is no arrangement. So this, you don't need to know about, but it's just worth seeing. So a good example of of seeing the arrangement of vascular bundles in the stem is in celery. If you were to chop up the celery and you put it into some dye, you would see after a while the celery will pull up that dye because of transpiration, and the vascular bundles take up that dye and you can see them really clearly. There you go. All right. So get into the habit of doing your own biological drawings to familiarise yourself with these different parts. So here's our xylem here in the middle bit. Then we've got our phloem, well, I've just labelled it here. And then the very outer part is the sclerenchyma. Now there's something in the bit just found in between the xylem and the phloem. If I just colour that line there, that's an important little layer. There's another tissue there as well called the cambium, and this cambium contains stem cells which will be able to differentiate into either xylem vessels or into phloem. And this is something we'll go into more detail a bit later on in the course. So that's the arrangement in the stems. Rather than being in the center, they are found on the outer edge. If you look at trees, every time a tree grows, it forms a new layer of xylem and phloem, and that's why trees have got the rings, that ring structure. You can see how old a tree is. Right, then finally, the final organ to be aware of in the plant with regards to the location of the vascular bundles is in the leaf. So if you were to draw a leaf, let's do this here. Right, and a leaf has a main vein going up the middle of it, and it branches off. But actually, we don't really think of it as a vein now. You can think of it as the major vessels, the major vascular tissue, so the phloem and the xylem running up that, and then it's branching off into each one here. This image you're seeing here, if you imagine we were to get a pair of scissors and cut straight through, and then we were to look at it like it was the flat side, the edge of a piece of paper, you can see here's the top of the leaf and here's the bottom. And where is the xylem and the phloem found now? Well, the xylem is found on the upper part, and the phloem is found below it. So again, we just do it as a biological drawing. The xylem is on the top, the phloem is on the bottom. Right. Main thing to take from this is you should be going away and practicing these drawings. If you cannot do these drawings on top, just from the top of your heads, you don't know this well enough. So by all means, go back to this, watch it again, or refer back to a book, but you must be able to draw and identify where they're found on each part of the plants.